morning, everyone. This is the May 24th Infrastructure Committee meeting. Today, actually, Ed Harmon will be arriving a little later, so he'll give his update later. On the agenda, we're planning to have some conversation with members of the Environmental Advisory Council, and also the director of the Lower Conservancy will be along shortly to also chat with us. So thank you all members of the Environmental Advisory Council for coming. If you guys want to introduce yourselves, that would be helpful, just in case anybody ever wants to watch the tape. They want to know who you are.
Rob Flake.
Tom Henry.
Okay, great. So why don't we'll move through the agenda to the portion of the agenda that includes the Environmental Advisory Council, and but welcome. Do you want to just begin, or shall I just say what we're hoping for this partnership?
Well, why don't you frame it so I don't begin in the wrong direction?
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason we wanted to invite you here today is actually to meet with, to begin a conversation about the role the Environmental Advisory Council might have in quantifying energy efficiency. Here, come sit here a moment.
Sorry, I'm late.
Glad you're here.
Yeah.
To discuss the role you guys might play in quantifying energy efficiency, which is a borough goal to obviously reduce our dependence on non-renewable energy sources, but we want to be able to measure that. And also, I think Mr. Metrick might want to say something about our application with the DEP and the ways in which the borough's required to kind of score or track our compliance with those Commonwealth requirements. So that's just sort of the general discussion. We also wanted you to be here present for the conversation with the Conservancy about the role they might be able to play in helping us with stormwater management, resident education, and possibly seeking funding, looking at funding sources that they might be in a position to help us look at. So.
And just to add, we did vote at the last council meeting to add 2 additional member roles for the EAC. So perhaps if folks are listening there, pique their interest.
So if anyone out there in the public, Cindy's reminding us that at the last council meeting we did decide to add 2 additional members to the EAC. Currently it's a 3-member commission, council, and so you guys will have 5 members.
And we're super fun to hang out with.
In the near future. Good, yeah, good.
Yeah, that's a good sell.
No backup. Good soundbite.
Great. So we're going to reverse the agenda. We're going to start with discussing energy with them, and then we'll discuss stormwater and other matters with you. And
That's good.
yeah, if you guys can stay for that, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Super.
So energy, we're building off of the borough's recent commitment to meet a goal of 100% renewable energy by 2040, with an interim goal of 100% renewable electricity by 2030. And that's community-wide, not just borough operations. So that's a big, ambitious goal, but it's an important goal. So to reach that goal, the general pathway, when you think about reaching carbon neutrality, which is another way of saying 100% renewable energy, at least for your energy sources, first, it's about efficiency. So you want to constrain your demand as much as possible, and that often has the biggest financial payback because you're obviously purchasing less. So we would first look at that universe. What can we do to consume less energy? Once you've consumed as far or reduced demand as far as you can, then you think about fuel switching. So where we're combusting fossil fuels, you would look at shifts, and technology is moving quickly there. Those aren't problems we have to solve today, but we know solutions are out there. So often that means shifting from things like natural gas to electric heat, which could include geothermal, solar, biofuels, that whole universe of technologies. And then finally, once you get it down as far as you can, you think about either offsetting or onsetting, which means if you still have to use some fossil fuels, which is certainly possible, that your lawnmowers or whatever, the last thing to transition just isn't ready to transition. There are ways to offset the greenhouse gas production through, say, planting trees, which we're doing anyway. So you think about it systemically like that. So that's sort of the general arc of the work we see ahead. And in our last EAC meeting, we talked about convening a climate action task force, because this is a serious long-term planning exercise that we need to undertake. And that's sort of the term of art, is climate action planning. So communities that have taken the same step that Norbert has in making a commitment to transition, and many others who haven't made a formal commitment are doing this. And so it's sort of a well-trod path that has so there'll be a lot in common between Norbert and other communities that are doing it, but also some unique elements just based on where we are and the borough we live in. So we'd like to put together a group to work that problem over the next few months, maybe a year, so that we can really prioritize our opportunities, make sure we're getting maximum bang for our buck, get those high ROI opportunities up front.
ROI is another term that you could define.
Yes, return on investment. So most of the things we would do to transition away from fossil fuels require some expense. Many of those expenses pay for themselves very quickly. When you switch out inefficient systems like old streetlights for highly efficient systems, like we do at home with our LED bulbs, things like that, the borough will actually save money in short order by so doing. But it's a curve, so you figure out which things are going to pay back the most, the fastest, and those are often the things you hit first.
Terrific. So that's a helpful outline. Efficiency, fuel switching, offsetting. These are things that people have already been doing in their homes.
Yep.
Turning off lights, insulating their homes.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then switching to electric when they can.
Right, exactly. So I would likely propose that from a borough perspective, the borough would start with its own operations first, for multiple reasons. It's the one thing where the borough has its hand on the throttle. So there's the element of control is important, but also tone setting, culture setting, and modeling. Right. You can't go out and ask people to make changes that you haven't made yourself. So I would anticipate that we would recommend starting there.
So where are we at this moment in time? Are we at a moment where we need to begin to measure, or that
Finding a baseline, is really important. Yeah. So and that often means doing energy audits, facility by facility, looking at your utility bills. Sometimes it's bringing in engineers. Eventually you would bring in an engineer to, sort of work the problem building by building and figure out what the right solutions are, system by system, space by space. And that, of course, would be interwoven with capital planning for the borough, because you don't necessarily want to invest in facilities that might be obsolete in short order. So
are we at this moment, Sean, able to begin to task these guys with figuring out the baseline?
Yeah, I would very much like if the EAC could help us create a baseline energy and fuel consumption for our buildings, for our fleet, for our operations.
Great.
And the hope that when we make those improvements, we can get credit for them. When the borough replaced the roof on this building in 2016, it added an inch of insulation to the roof. So I would like us to not only get a baseline, but also a dashboard and a way to calculate those changes so we can track and make and record progress towards our goals. And I would like the thread to be woven into capital planning. We've been discussing internally the needs of the Public Works Department, the Police Department. Some of those are vehicle needs.
Right.
If we stick with a diesel burning public works truck, can we do one that gets better gas mileage? And then that's an incremental move. And maybe there's a long-term move towards other fuel sources, other ways of propulsion that are
Absolutely.
neutral.
Yeah, so and then those are basic calculations. You can run just life cycle cost analyses on things. The big question for the borough is, would you eventually apply or immediately apply a cost of carbon, right, to give value to the efficiency beyond the economic payback? There are economically rational reasons to do that. If a carbon tax were to be passed, if a carbon tax gets passed in 2 years and we've made purchasing decisions without assuming one, then we've made bad financial decisions. Right. So, but we don't know the future, so that requires a little prognostication and an application of our own values. That we think this is important, and therefore we're going to assign a value to it. And that can sometimes tip the scales on which truck you buy, right?
And we're about to embark on a very significant energy savings project by swapping our metal halide and high pressure sodium lighting to LEDs. So that's almost half of our electricity consumption is going to go away.
Right.
It'd be kind of
That's
nice if
amazing.
we could establish 2019 as our baseline year before any of that happens.
We want credit for the lights.
Yeah.
We'll all feel good about that.
Yeah.
Well, if you keep your electrical bills, then
Speaking of ROI, the consulting firm for the Regional Planning Commission came and showed us the spreadsheet on how much we would save, and it's like, I don't know, it's close to $800,000 over 10 years after an initial cost of like $250,000 or something. I mean, it pays for itself in like 3 years.
Yeah.
Then it's good. Not only does it pay for itself, but the difference in consumption of electricity on a yearly basis pays for the financing for the capital switch out. So after we've paid for the investment, which I think is a 4-year,
4 years.
we'll have to basically be having the same amount of money will be going out of the borough for 4 years, but when that's over, all of a sudden
then
that
it's pure
cost
savings.
drop.
Yeah.
It's 50%.
It's
And we
one-
spend about $75,000 a year right now on electricity.
Okay.
So the same, can the same kind of analysis be done for our vehicles and our fleet?
We have fuel, we have.
And is that the kind of work that you guys are in a position to do? With
I think we
the
can-
right inputs, if you
Potentially, yeah. I mean, they're not sophisticated. Yeah.
It's fairly sophisticated. I'm an air quality meteorologist, and I've done some of this for manufacturing, not as much for vehicle fleets. But the technology is changing. You also have to be realistic. We're in a political cycle too, and changing regulations and what's happening, what we have control of. But setting the baseline is critical to determining where we're going to go from here. And if you're going to do swap outs or considering them, you want to set your baselines.
I mean, I can't speak for the whole council, but my sense is that if the borough staff can provide you guys with raw data, and you can then help them get on track with a plan for, say, switching out the vehicle fleet,
Right.
however that phase, that would be huge. And that would be service to you as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we need a tool, a dashboard to help us track our progress.
Yep.
And then the same with the capital, looking at the capital improvement plan for all of the borough buildings and properties as well.
Yeah.
That would help as well.
That's going to be more, I'd imagine, more sophisticated calculation, but
You would use an engineer and an architect during your planning, but potentially then apply a shadow cost of carbon or things like that as you're assessing different options.
But I mean, in any way that they can feed you guys with raw data and push you to your limits
Yeah.
then we'll see where we need some additional assistance, and
That's right.
and you can work that through together. Does that all workable?
Yep.
Okay.
That's great.
Good.
Bob, my comment was too, this is really helpful, particularly when we're thinking about the use of the Sabine Avenue property. So to hear you even specifically talk about the renewable energy, we would love to buy an electric car when it is time. However, we can't because we don't have a driveway.
Right.
So as we're thinking about borough property and doing a dashboard,
Yep.
really when we're developing an RFP for Sabine, maybe that's the place where you have an electric charging station or a community compost, or it would also be helpful as we're doing this baseline, perhaps to get some recommendations from our EAC that could be incorporated into any RFPs
Absolutely.
that we do for property.
So is that too soon? Do you want to just say work at one chunk at a time? So you're going to take a whole bunch of raw data, come up with some baseline information and kind of a strategy. Then do you want to sort of deal with that next layer of kind of how do we implement change within the community?
Yes, but we don't want to miss opportunities. So I don't think action has to be tabled while we're planning, because the business of the borough goes on, and so I don't want to hold up all decisions.
So if you guys can walk and chew gum, that's great. I'm like I can only chew gum.
Well, we may not. If we have to make a decision about Sabine, it's a great example. Like, do we want to invest in electrical vehicle charging stations?
Sure.
Will we know where that fits in terms of ROI with all the universe of opportunities? Maybe not, and we'll just have to say we think this is worth it. So you just have to sort of make a snap judgment project by project, and that's the reality of government.
Okay, great. Well, we'll just keep speaking these ideas, and we'll just keep pushing.
Absolutely.
And you all will do what you can.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm really happy that you'll have 2 new members, and want to thank you. I mean, the amount of work you've done, the time you've been developed is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's one of the creation of the EAC has been a long time coming. It's something Dan Walk wanted to see happen 20 years ago, along with on-street electric charging stations, so he could charge his car. he moved over to Schindler. Over to the other side of Montgomery Avenue, Schiller.
Yeah.
So he's no longer here to push, but it's great that you guys are all willing to do this.
Thank you.
Could I ask a quick question, and I don't want to get lost in the weeds here, but does the borough have already set your vehicle turnover times? How many years?
No is the quick answer.
Your cost, because you have to lay those out in advance. You've done these swap outs before, even when there isn't a flood.
Yeah, the quick answer is no, it's not, written down, but that's what we're working on right now. We have older vehicles that are in pretty good shape, so it's not really always about the age of the vehicle. It's what does the department need, whether it's Public Works or Police Department, what are their needs, and is the fleet meeting those needs in this moment?
Right.
And some of it has to do with age. Some of the vehicles are just old. The parking controller's car is old, but it works fine. Right. And I always say the most efficient, greenest car you have is the one in your driveway.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
So we like to keep our fleet in good order and running, and it's running a lot better now, especially the PD's vehicles are all up and operating.
That's great.
And we have time on our side in the sense that in the future, someone's going to make a good electric dump truck at some point, or an electric street cleaner.
Right, we're not there yet, but
We're not there yet, but it will happen.
yeah.
So, I think just for the sake of keeping the agenda moving, since we sort of have a hard stop at 9, I think it would be a good moment to transition over to our conversation with the Lower Main Conservancy. But I want to echo Cindy's thank you to you guys for your service. And this is just the beginning of something really, really good. And I really admire your competencies, all 3 of you. I appreciate it.
Happy to contribute.
So we're going to actually go back to the top of the agenda and hear our report from Director of Public Works if you're game yet.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. I apologize for being late. I was monitoring the work on North Wynwood Avenue with Pico. They're working north to south from Montgomery Avenue towards the tunnel. They're doing their fact finding, if you will, right now, locating the gas and current water meters and locations. And they're going to be starting the main installation next week. So that's where I was this morning. I apologize. We're in full summer mode right now, maintaining the parks and playgrounds. We had an inspection done in March of our playground equipment. It came back with a positive result. We didn't have any deficiencies, other than we need to apply some more sand as a base. So that's good. We have new equipment that we're using and helping to upgrade the athletic fields here at Narberth Park, as well as Sabine. So that's kind of our strategy right now, is to monitor and maintain the parks and playgrounds.
I've got two questions.
Sure.
One is, can you just tell us just a little detail about what the playground inspection is, who does it, and how that's, how the good mark is determined?
It was performed by an outside certified playground inspector. I'm not a certified playground inspector, so we contracted with Willow Works, who did that inspection. They looked at all the playground equipment on both Narberth Park and Sabine. Looked at all the nuts and bolts, literally, to make sure that they were in compliance and everything checked out suitably. So that was a good turnout.
Do they then give you a list of maintenance or suggestions for how to improve?
We have a monthly maintenance checklist that we've been using, and we will use going forward, yes.
Terrific. And my second question has to do with the field upgrades. Some residents were talking about the way the baseball field, for example, was maintained in the past, and wanted to know the difference between what's happening now and what happened before. And I thought maybe you could just explain what's happening now. Yeah.
Okay, because I really can't explain what happened
I think
before. What we're doing is using more infield conditioner to get the combination of infield mix and infield conditioner to the appropriate percentages, so that during rain events and play events that they're appropriately maintained. And we've also upgraded our maintenance level of grooming the field, so that the planation of the field is accurate, things like that. So that it's an upgraded maintenance program that we're doing on the field.
Super. Thank you. Does anybody else have questions?
That's my question.
Can I, I can add one, it might be worth mentioning the Sabine improvements.
Oh yes, well just yesterday we had 5 pieces of equipment put in up at Sabine. We removed some of the older equipment that had been there since the 50s. And we were going to restore those pieces, but take them out of physical service as play pieces. So that was done. The tape came down this morning, and so now we have a bunch of new equipment up at Sabine.
Fantastic.
I love that you're going to restore the old equipment from the 50s. What will you do with it once you restore it?
Well, the shuttle, I think there's a neighbor who wants to purchase that, and help restore that, and then recreate it in the park. And then there's the little duck. We're not quite sure how we're going to restore it.
It sounds like some public art there.
That's great that you hung on to them. And you hung on to the space shuttle.
Yes.
Fantastic. Good.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just gonna. Please.
I'm sorry, we haven't met. I don't know your name.
Ed Harmon.
And a question about whether you've ever kept data. We were talking a little about baseline data. Everything as far as doing metrics, requires setting a baseline.
Sure.
And I was wondering if you keep any information on how often the fields are unplayable, or you have water inundation. If you keep a record of that, whether we could start keeping that type of information. We have a meteorological station up at St. Harbor. We have them at Lower Marion, and the community network of stations, some of which are better than others. But that might become helpful in going forward and saying, you know, as far as how often we have flooding or how often
Unplayable
fields play
surfaces,
unplayable. And when you do it, if you were to do an improvement to the playground surface, or, you know, you're talking about stormwater, detention, if that might play into showing an improvement in availability of the fields, you know,
Well,
versus, you know,
being unplayable, we communicate with the Narberth Athletic Association as to the condition of the field. However, it is a public playground, so therefore I can't control people coming in and playing on it
Right.
when it's in an under my consideration, an unplayable situation. So they will, you know, reschedule a baseball game or St. Margaret's football, but that doesn't mean that there aren't folks on the playground
Sure.
using it. So the data is kind of not quite, I think, what you're looking for.
But the number of days you might designate it as unplayable, whether or not somebody actually goes out there,
Right.
if it passes that threshold where you say, this is too wet, I think that would probably be the kind of threshold.
I'll put you in touch with the residents who do work with the Athletic Association, and they may be able to just sort of search their emails to see how many times they
Right,
closed.
that would be
they
one way to
declared
do it.
the field's closed for activity, or how
That'd
many
be
times they
fine. The
canceled.
thing is,
in the last- They probably have that. They could probably figure that out going back a few years just by looking at when they sent out
You need
emails.
constancy, and you need to be able to reproduce your data too. So we need, how do you determine it's not playable? That kind of information, so that the data going forward is not skewed in one way or another.
Do you know who the decision maker is on the Athletic Association?
I don't.
You know, well, I'll
I
help you.
go out.
I'll help you figure it out.
My cleats and everything are
Right.
in mud, and it's not good, but St. Margaret always gets out there anyways. So.
I know Greg Knox
Right.
monitors the schedule, and he's done,
Yeah.
you know, as we miss days, he adjusts the play schedule. So he may be the one that has that data that you're
Yeah,
looking
I think if we get you in a conversation with Greg Knox, then you'll be able to figure it out, what they know and what they don't know. And maybe you can help them establish some standards for how they make that decision.
I'm sorry. I can talk to Greg. He lives a couple doors down from me, so I see him all the time. So
Beautiful.
I can talk to Greg about what he knows and how he can help.
So then you guys will be able to come back to the council with some of a suggestion or an idea, or to the staff.
And so it's all about baseline. Same thing, this is not necessarily top for today, but also if we keep a log of people who have inundated properties, you know, who has flooding damage, who, or is their databases, you know, people report for insurance purposes. But if the borough has information on which areas are flooded during what events, then we can tie it back to precipitation amounts. And, you know, we understand if the intensity of rainfall is increasing, or we have a trend, a climatological trend, you can project future issues. And that plays into your capacities for stormwater, infrastructure, that kind of stuff. So it's just baseline, but that's like a much bigger thing. I'm just thinking about the field here.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. So that might be a good segue. Do you have more to add to your report, or towards?
I
Okay.
do not, unless you have any other
Sean?
questions.
No? Okay, so that's the perfect segue into our conversation with Maureen McGeehan from the Lower Marion Conservancy. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining
my
us
pleasure.
today, and we're so glad that we can all talk together.
Yeah.
You had offered to residents of the Conservancy had offered to residents of the borough a program to help advise residents about ways to manage stormwater on private property
Right.
and an assessment tool.
Right.
And then you had also offered to join us for a discussion about how the Conservancy might be able to partner with the borough in different ways
Right.
around resident education and possibly in funding
Right.
stormwater initiatives. So
Yeah.
please.
So, so we have a fairly robust stormwater education program. It's called our Stream Smart House Call program. So it's an opt-in program. We advertise it to Lower Marion Township residents and Narberth residents. It's paid for by the William Penn Foundation and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, where the Conservancy and occasionally one of our watershed partners will go onto a property owner's home and walk the property, look at what sort of systems they already have in place for capturing stormwater, whether they have plantings or trees or downspouts going in the right direction. And then we do a pretty formal report with recommendations and photographs and links to resources. So that's something we've been doing for about 2 or 3 years now with the current funding. It's something that I don't think that Narberth residents have taken full advantage of, so I think there's huge opportunity for better advertising of it and getting the word out. And I think, Sean, you've been aware of this program, I think.
Been
maybe.
introduced to it.
Introduced, yeah. So I think we could use help in figuring out the best way, whether it's street by street or maybe not the borough website, but that could help a little bit. Making sure we reach as many people as possible in the borough and can get as many of these audits done. So that's one way we could help, and that should count towards your MS4 permit requirements. It's one of those sort of check boxes that you can check off. I know the township uses that when they do their reporting to DEP. We also do.
I'm sorry, can you, in the meantime, can you figure out how to communicate this? How would someone sign up now?
So right now, there are a number of ways. So we have a number of watershed partners that I think we have 7 or 8 of them that are in this project together with us. They're all over the region, essentially. And there's a central website. It's the Stream Smart House Calls website. I can tell you exactly.
It's been sent out with the borough, the Friday newsletter now for several weeks in a row. It'll be going out today also.
Okay. Yeah, so that's one way.
Yeah.
And another way is to contact the Conservancy directly. I mean, that might be the simplest way for people. But yeah, phone call, sign up through this link.
And we have been announcing it, but I wanted to interrupt at this moment and just talk about an action step and see what you guys think of this. But I'm aware that there are certain properties where you see a pipe at the curb, and then you see water coming to the curb line, even on a dry day like today.
Right.
And I kind of think that one way to identify properties where the residents might benefit from this service immediately is just to go around and find where the water is on a dry day, where it's coming into the street, and then present that resident with this opportunity.
Yeah.
And my home is one of those, but I've also seen them I've seen them on Hanson Court and Foxhall Lane, and I've seen them.
Right.
We see these all over the place, and in the wintertime they pose a problem because they ice up. They ice up, and I kind of think that I'm just wondering about that as a first pass, like looking to those residences as a kind of like the low hanging fruit.
It's oftentimes hard to know where that is coming from. I mean, sometimes a resident knows, and I mean, this happens all the time on these properties where there's a pipe coming from somewhere, and you can assume it's coming from somewhere, some underground system on the property, but it's not a guarantee unless the plans exist somewhere. So we could make suggestions if we know the origin of that water, but it might be difficult to figure out.
It's just a thought that maybe if we look at the properties proximal to the source of the water
Right.
and do an
Cover all the
evaluation,
bases.
just
Yeah.
cover all the bases, that
Right.
we might make a difference. And I mean, as opposed to sort of just hoping that people will volunteer to participate
that's
from
the
anywhere.
hard thing is, right.
Because you might choose to volunteer and your property's actually pretty good.
And that does happen. I mean,
Yeah.
we step on properties all the time where they have, lots of plantings and trees and they're aware of the problem and they're excited about finding more solutions. We are contacted less frequently by the people who don't truly understand what stormwater is or where it goes and what they can do to help manage it. So
as an action step, could the borough or the conservancy say, or maybe in partnership, write a letter that we could hand deliver to property owners? And it's just an invitation to participate in the assessment and say, we've observed that there's water coming to the face of curb near your property, and we think that, for the sake of like our stormwater management, if you were to participate in this free thing, it may contribute to the betterment of the borough's issue.
Sure, yeah.
And it's like, and we deliver a letter with the information about how to sign up, and and it's really a request. Please consider participating. Does that make sense to you guys? Yeah.
Can I ask
Does
that?
that
I
make
wonder
sense to you?
if, I think if we could perhaps maybe work a little more efficiently, if you're developing a climate action planning team, I actually had put why don't we have green teams? Because we talked about this with recycling. I do wonder if there's a cohort of volunteers that would do some knocking of neighbors and saying, hey, here are 3 things right now you can do that will change your environmental sustainability. 1, let me educate you on recycling. Here's the cheat sheet from Veronica, right? The plastic bags, not good. Here, have this. 2, you can have the Lower Merion Conservancy come out and do a free evaluation and report of your thing. 3, right now, here's the app. You can change to wind energy. It's not a hoax. When some random person comes to your house, I'm telling you as my neighbor, right now it takes 30 seconds. I would volunteer to do that and think that we would get enough folks that could do 3 5-minute, in 5 minutes, 3 things that you could do
That's
right now.
That's also a great idea. I think we were talking about specifically the way in which the Conservancy can partner with us in stormwater improvements.
But that'll be one of the 3.
That's absolutely one of the 3. I'm just following the water upstream. I'm talking about following the water upstream to where it's coming from. And since it's visible now, we can actually pinpoint. There's water coming from here. Let's go talk to these people, and that's the purpose of having this letter now. The green teams and everything. I think we've got to do that. That's a great idea, and I think we have probably volunteer capacity to do it. Let's plan to do that. This is just a step that we could do almost in the coming week. I think to have a letter like that. And we have people who could deliver those already. Who can identify the source of the water.
It'd be helpful if we could, we don't have it right now, but if we could have some incentive for people to contact us. During our first run with this program, we had rain barrels that we could give away that were funded. And that was oftentimes the reason why people called us, because they wanted a free rain barrel or free plants. We had free plants. We don't have them right now, but we could figure out something in the near future, grant-wise, where maybe we could do that. Maybe we could do the first run of letters, and then once we have in hand something that we can offer people, maybe we do another sort of sweep.
Well, that's a good idea, and the offer is a free assessment. So that's a little bit of a perk.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, if people are interested.
Especially if your basement's wet, you might want to know how to help dry it up.
Yeah.
So there's more to discuss. So
If I could just add one thing, and I'm running into this, is that in some renovations I've seen where it's obvious that the person who's interested in stormwater that sees that the water coming off the roof is going directly underground.
Right.
And so they're putting it into a drain, putting it into the sewer. Those people are happy because they don't have a wet yard.
Right.
And you're gonna have people that are, I want to believe that everybody is going to be open to, you're going to get people that are very open to an assist on this matter. You have other people that don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah.
And that where there are illegal connections and that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of water going into our sewer. Just,
Yeah,
and
I
I'm
mean,
wondering if you run into that.
all the
Those are
time.
things that
Yeah.
would be, that's a lot of water that we could get rid of. And what do you do in that?
I mean,
In
that's.
case you refer to the township, to...
No, we actually offer a solution on the spot, and that, we see that all the time in Lower Marion Township in particular, on some of these densely developed streets where it's, in Ardmore, where it's mostly pavement, and everybody's got one or more, gutters going straight into a pipe underground and directly to the street, and people, some are interested in cutting that downspout because it can easily be sawed through, in seconds without any machinery. And you can put a rain barrel there. You can put in a downspout that, diverts the rain to a garden, a rain garden. So there are people who are willing to do it, but then there are plenty who don't want to mess with something that's working for them already. And that people are afraid of water in the basement.
It's harder to know when the water's going to the sewer. It's easier to see when it's going into the, to the face of the curb. And it's the newer homes, and it's the commercial properties that bring it to the curb. It's the older homes that maybe have it piped in directly to the sewer, and how do you observe where that's coming from unless the cameras that you guys put in see it.
Do you have those
You might not be able to
plans
see it that way.
for the newer properties that have the stormwater systems?
Yeah.
So it's probably easy to tell, right, what's going on there
Yeah,
with the water, where it's coming from.
and our stormwater management ordinance goes into effect when you disturb more than 2,000 square feet, so,
Right. Yeah.
and you have to implement the measures in the ordinance.
Yeah.
So new homes have innovative stormwater systems. Any new home that's been built in borough, and the system they typically want to install is an underground stone basin,
Right.
typically the size of a vehicle,
Right.
more or less.
Right.
Water goes in,
Yeah.
percolates through, and has an overflow.
Yeah.
And that takes care of their required.
And are they required? I know the township requires annual maintenance of those
Yeah.
systems and proof that they've been maintained. Either, I think every other year they have to have an inspector report.
Okay.
It's super hard to enforce.
Yeah,
But
I can imagine.
they're trying.
Yeah, that's one of those things where if you're not going to maintain it, it's going to be on you eventually.
Exactly.
You're going to
yeah.
have to, the
Right.
property owner's going to deal with the consequences of not maintaining their own
Right.
infrastructure.
Right. I mean, the system the stream will suffer as well.
But with our, like on Price Crossing, that's a system that's owned by the homeowners association. It's going to be brought into creation once those units are occupied.
Right.
So that system has to be maintained annually
Okay.
and will
Yeah.
be reviewed,
Right.
looked at.
Right.
Is it currently legal if somebody doing a renovation of an older home just pipes it to the sewer or through a drain
Well,
basin?
everyone keeps saying sewer. There's two sewer systems in the borough. There's
Storm sewer.
sanitary sewer and there's storm
Right.
sewer. So fortunately, our systems are separate. It's not the case in large portions of Philadelphia. We don't have a problem that I know of, a big problem of people diverting storm into the sanitary. People do connected stormwater trains. The drop hits the roof, goes in the gutter downspout, and goes right. It spends its entire life moving through an impervious delivery system right to the storm system, and that's compliant.
That is compliant.
That is compliant.
To the storm system,
But what we-
not to the sewer.
Correct. But what we'd like to see is that train be disconnected, that the water pass through some hopefully-
retention of some sort.
hopefully something beautiful and green
Yeah.
that cleans, detains, and retains some of that water, evaporates it back up before it ends up in our storm system. Because the storm systems in the borough empty into the creek.
Right.
They all have outfalls in the Indian Creek, so it all eventually goes back into the natural water system. But what I do want to point out too, a common problem we do have is persons connecting their sumps in their basements to the sanitary system.
Right.
So whenever we see that in any inspection, that's
Yeah.
a red flag and they have to disconnect it. So that's where you might see someone, all of a sudden there's a new discharge happening on the street because they did some plumbing job in their basement. The inspector said, hey, you can't have that, and they've had to disconnect it. And it's not okay to put your sump into the sanitary system. It's a
Does the borough
don't do
fine,
that.
do you fine people for that kind of thing?
We
or
don't
just-
fine people. I think it's, and
Just
what we
teaching
find is a
them.
lot of persons just didn't realize that was,
Right.
they're like, oh, I didn't even realize that
Right.
was going in, and sure, we'll fix that.
Okay.
But then they have a different problem they have to deal with. They have a discharge that they have to deal with.
Right.
And a lot of times it ends up getting piped right out to the street because no one wants to deal with water on their
Right,
property, and that's
right.
kind of what we're fighting. It's
And
like-
that's sort of that's where our program kicks in and can be helpful.
And I think that's where if we could have, if that makes sense to you guys, have a letter that we can deliver to residents when we see water at the face of the curb, it gives them an option. Gives them an opportunity to do something about that.
Yeah, disconnected downspouts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Break it up.
right, exactly,
There's other
yeah.
ways, I mean, there's other ways, yeah.
Yeah, so, and I'm not, I know you don't have your MS4 permit yet, or do you? You're getting it this year.
That's probably a much longer conversation.
Is it, okay, yeah.
Bob, you want to have that conversation now? Or?
I just want to offer that there are a number of things that we're already doing that you can count towards some of the requirements in that permit.
But you're talking mostly the education.
Yeah,
outreach.
we do have some money for education of public works staff. So we have put on, not us, but we hire a consultant to put on a illicit discharge and detection inspection workshop or other sort of housekeeping requirements that permit.
Yeah, I would like the borough to partner with the Conservancy on those kinds
Yeah,
of
because
education.
we have a little bit of money for that, and we can easily do that. Our public workshops and lectures too. I think. I mean, that falls under the public education, but that can also count, and the numbers of people that attend those. So I just want to make sure that you're aware that we can help a little bit towards that.
Okay.
We don't have time for it at this meeting, but we on EAC are wondering what Sean, you hope or would like to have from us, if anything, and
Can I
beyond the education side.
Is that okay,
Yeah,
Bob,
so-
for me to tease
Well,
that with this
so-
one?
I was actually hoping to have an additional meeting with you guys.
Okay.
I wanted Maureen to have more time for the Conservancy to work through some of the things they have to offer and partner with the borough, and wanted you guys to be here to hear that conversation. But I think this is like our next step with the EAC is actually to refine, your agenda in action.
Good.
And so, but I think, I think it would take up easily the rest of the time we have this morning, and I was hoping to give the table to Maureen.
No, that's great. I just want to make sure that conversation happens.
Okay, super. That's
And I
great.
mentioned to Jesse a week or so ago, any of the work that the Conservancy is doing is better, has a better chance of being used by the borough, or if it's easier with, with the council, we could work through EAC. We don't have to be separate in our work.
Super. Is there more that you wanted to ask or offer?
Well,
now?
I would like to, one thing that would be great for us and great for you is if we can partner together on some of the larger projects. You and I talked a little bit about the Wynwood Haverford Avenue project that's in the CIP. And that's something that, I don't know the timeline for that, but I think I read the scope, it has a chance to go green or has a chance to go gray, maybe?
It'll be both.
A little bit of both?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, I'd love to be able to keep the conversation going so that we can apply for some grant money and know exactly what's happening so that we can get that application in. But if it's too far down the road, we might, not be able to do that.
I'm sorry, can I clarify?
Mhm.
So you would put in grant money to complement the work that we're doing on Windsor,
Yes.
if we can make it green?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have.
We're just starting down the road, the literal road. I mean, we haven't even heard a proposal yet, so
Yeah,
I don't think we missed that opportunity.
Yeah, so that's what I'm not quite sure. I know the scopes and the capital improvement plan, right?
Yeah, I think we're talking about two different projects.
Yeah, Maureen's is offering partnership on the North Wynwood Avenue
Oh, North
project,
Wynwood. I think
which
it's
is
in
in
Windsor.
the
did I?
CIP. But
Okay.
there's by extension, they're willing to help us down the road with other complete streets initiatives. But I think, but closest to now, the next thing that's happening probably is North Wynwood Avenue, because that's already in the CIP, and there's already, I think that you're already developing plans for that, aren't you?
No, we have
Concepts,
this concept from
some feasibility.
a couple of years ago.
For
They
Wynwood.
have some feasibility for Wynwood, yeah, and they've begun to look at that as a kind of a next step because so much of the problems in the field and in the creek come from that.
Right.
Down that road.
But can we, if there's grant money and opportunity to partner now, I mean, we are starting this evaluation on Windsor, which is what
Yeah, so
I said.
anything that is starting that will become a project, we could apply for money. I mean, we have I think, a stronger opportunity than most because of our partnership with Delaware River Watershed Initiative that just opens us up to more opportunities. So really anything green that you're doing that's stormwater related, we can get an application in. The applications for this year have essentially passed. NIFWIF has gone, DCNR's gone, and you probably know others that are going too. But I think towards the end of the year, Growing Greener, next April will be NIFWIF again, DCNR again. We can just start trying to get some money.
Sean, how do you see us, I'm sorry, one last follow-up then. That's really fabulous. I love working efficiently with somebody else's dollars.
Yeah, oh,
Greener.
absolutely, yeah.
So Sean, how can we coordinate our conversation, and Bob, with the Windsor Ave corridor?
Yeah, so I was just going to go the same place that you're going. I mean, it's a practical question.
Right.
About, and I think it's, maybe you want to sit with it for a while, Sean. It's like, does it serve the residents of the borough for the council to be involved in that? Does it serve the residents of the borough better for the professional staff to work directly with the Conservancy? I think you could get back to us on that. Like, what's the, what do you propose as the kind of the best interface? And because this may not be practical for us to meet as a council with the Conservancy. I mean, it may just be most practical for the Conservancy just to work hand in hand with the borough on whatever projects are coming up. But absolutely, this is the beauty of this of the Conservancy's offer, is that they may have access to funds that the borough doesn't have access to on its own, possibly, and that's what we want to find out. Yeah. So can we just leave that with you, just as something to ponder and get back to us about?
It's more than pondering. It's something we work on every week.
Yeah, I know, but
Like, sorry,
we have a very. It's a big item. It's what we're going to be talking about in the context of our capital plan, in the context of Windsor Avenue. It's a universal, Mount Rushmore kind of theme of all of our facilities maintenance and improvements.
So would it be? Why don't we just have that on our agenda for our next infrastructure meeting, and you can give us a update as to what the practical result is of today's conversation. And I'd like, in the meantime, I'd really like to work with you or the borough on a letter that we can just deliver to people who, when we see that, that anyone could deliver to a neighbor when they see water
Like
in the
hand
street.
deliver.
Hand deliver,
Okay.
yeah. Just, dear neighbor, like here's an opportunity. Notice you have water coming to the curb. You know, I should get 3 of those letters because there's 3 spots where the water comes to the curb. So it's not
Okay.
picking on any neighbors. It's,
Right.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
it's a real
Right.
issue, and it's
Yeah.
not always obvious what the solution
That's
is.
right.
Yeah.
And can I, borrowing from the Shade Tree Commission, I think it's been really effective to just garner some conversation is to have the signs, you know, a shade tree, future home is here.
Mhm.
You know, it would be interesting to think about, is there equivalent for the stormwater
Just
or
that
the
our streets
climate or the
Right.
something
Yeah.
that you can put, you know, Marlborough House has been green by EAC.
Yeah, it's
Conservancy.
funny, we've talked about
Great
the program, the group of organizations that are in this project together, thought about the same thing, these lawn signs that we plop in for a couple weeks about, essentially saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Of course, then the lawn signs will be in the bottom of the ocean for the next 3
I know, well, we could get a couple of them and move them around.
Yeah.
I'm
Just
sorry to
keep
throw cold
tabs.
water on that. Is there anything else, Maureen?
Well, you had talked about metrics in an email to me. How, and I don't know the
I think
significance
the
of that.
EAC is going to working with the borough on that.
Like
on establishing
stormwater
baselines.
metrics.
That's what our next conversation
Yeah,
is.
that's the
Okay,
next
and you
conversation.
and I talked a little bit
Yeah.
about how those metrics could be achieved for stormwater,
Mhm.
and it's no easy task.
There's one thing while you're all here that, and we have we've run out of time now. Just thinking about as new construction, new developments happening in the downtown, there are maybe opportunities there for pocket parks or stormwater features. And, you know, I had a brief conversation with Sean yesterday about it. You know, would it be possible for us to say to developers, the shape of this public curb is to be determined? And, you know, Sean made the point that most of those curbs are going to remain in place, you know, with the exception of where there's curb cuts. So, you know, it might not be an opportunity at this moment, but that we should still look in the context of the Complete Streets program of the Windsor Avenue for opportunities to do things, like to build things like that that are going to make a difference. Did you want to add anything to that, or what I just said about that?
No, it's very sophisticated and we're learning how to design our infrastructure through this project on Windsor Avenue. So there's the project itself, there's the improvements we're doing, there's also a lot of back office education that's happening too. We're learning new skills about how to integrate all of our infrastructure concerns into a rational decision about how we want to invest a lot of money. And it's something thousands of people use every year.
Yeah. And so what I'm aware is happening is as we see the new development and as neighbors explore temporary pop-up pocket parks, and the county planners came with some really beautiful drawings suggesting stormwater features on the, you know, in the street that could also sort of double as pocket parks. That these ideas are really exciting and interesting, and we'd all like to do them. And so it's like, how do we practically kind of hold placehold these sites? And since there's development happening and there's maybe a moment of change, maybe there's a way we can sort of start to mark them in some way and to designate them as designate the opportunity. So we keep talking about it, we don't just lose the thread. And
Yeah.
so if you could be thinking about that.
I think they would work out well in front of every fire hydrant in the borough.
Mhm. Mhm. Kind of gathering places, stormwater.
Yeah, you can't park there anyway.
Good point.
Got 25 feet.
It's great. I mean,
Yeah.
that could be a huge impact. That would be something we could measure. Yeah. So I think we're going to, because the day is getting our time together is really pretty much over. Just want to give everyone a last go around if there's anything else you want to add to the meeting. And then we'll adjourn without completing this agenda, and we'll pick it up next month. There's nothing urgent on here, I don't think, unless you need to go through capital.
No, we'll be talking a lot about that in the meeting on the 5th.
Okay, so yeah, just another go around. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I
today,
think
or-
I'm really excited about the opportunity to get more residents involved in stormwater. I think people are ready and eager to learn more. It's just tapping into them, and maybe this letter drop-off thing is just the way.
I'm eager to help with that, Tom. Anything?
No, I would just like to suggest, and I think you brought it up earlier, that maybe we need to get another meeting together with you all to talk about a lot of specific, because there seems to be a lot going on in the borough that I'm not aware of that we may be able to get involved with. And, Windsor, I didn't hear about the North Windwood project, so those types of things I think would be interesting for us to hear and to talk about in detail. If you find someone who wants a property evaluation, I would really like to go along
Are you the
with you.
stormwater guy?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we should
At least
talk.
on one or two to see how they're.
Oh,
what they're
yeah.
running.
We would.
And There's other properties like this one across the bridge that mows down to the stream, Norbrook Park, which does the same thing. I'd like to
Yeah.
talk to you about that too. in
Okay,
terms of
yeah, we'd very
what
much
we've
like to
done.
do that. And we have done a project in our, I can bring you up to speed on
Yeah, that
things
would be
we've
great.
done.
I know
Yeah.
there's a lot of straight pipes going into the stream up there.
Yes, maybe we'll exchange some information
Yeah,
at the.
yeah, that'd be great.
Terrific.
Okay.
Maybe we can be a team and deliver those letters and identify the sites.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the sites are sump pumps. I know
I know.
up the street from us,
No,
there's
mine
sump
are.
pumps, and I got straight pipes from the gutters going into the
Yeah.
stream and stuff. And I'd like to get a little bit of information on the general permit. Maybe talk to Sean or Matt about that, in terms of the PRP and the 6 general requirements of the permit and so forth. Those it includes illicit discharge identification and the public identification, public involvement. So a little bit more information on the status of that. And I can call Matt or you later about that and see where we are.
Thanks for being here today. If you're available in a month and you guys want to continue the EAC, this conversation, that'd be great. Do you have anything else to add? Wrap up?
Not at this point, but there's a lot to cover though.
Tom speaks my mind.
Okay. Jess?
I guess final statement is I would like us to have just the standard operating procedure of as we use our environmental lens and approaching new projects, that one of the action steps in that is reaching out to the Conservancy to see how we can work efficiently and strategically to apply for grant funds.
Right.
I think we just put that in our, again, standard operating procedure, whether it's St. Vine Avenue, whether it's Windsor Avenue, even outreach. I suspect there might be educational funds that would help support with outreach. So thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Nothing.
Sean?
Thank you.
Last words?
Just a few action items coming up at the meeting. Sorry. We should have, at the next business meeting, we should have the bid for the concrete work at 201 Sabine teed up and ready to vote on to advertise. We should have the award, we should have a recommendation of any bids we get on the roof project, which is out in the wild right now. So we could be awarding a bid at that meeting, and we also might, it's going to be a meeting of bids. The third one would be, we're working to get the bid for the vertical shielding of the Narberth Avenue Bridge out in June too.
Great. When you ready, bridge updates? Do you want to give a bridge update since people might be?
Yeah, we will be opening the bridge soon to vehicle and pedestrian traffic. We have agreed upon a design for that and worked out the details. We're ordering the equipment and signs we need to do that. The one variable we need to solve, and literally it's a variable, is the borough engineer needs to give us a weight limit that we can add as a static load to the bridge, because we've selected water-filled barricades and we need to know how much water we can put in them. We can't fill them up all the way.
Yeah, put 9,000 pounds of water and then you have to close the bridge again.
Are the walkways going to
okay.
continue to be fenced off?
So
Yeah, no walking on the sidewalk.
that's all. We are adjourned. Thank you all for coming today. Really
Yeah, thanks for
appreciate it.
tonight.
Glad you're able to make